What's up? Welcome back to the Metalhead Car Show. So a long while ago, I did a video looking at cars you've forgotten about. And it's been a while and more cars just kind of popped to mind recently, so I wanted to do a part 2. Now some of these are super low production, some of them are cars that didn't sell very well, so we're not going to dawdle. Let's get right into it. Starting off with a V8 American supercar, which frankly is pretty much all of them, but we're going to be looking at the Mosler MT. Mosler MT? I don't care. So the Mosler MT came out in 2005. When it came out then, it was using a Chevy LS1 small block V8. It was making about 350 horsepower, and even with kind of the lack of horsepower, which 350 ain't nothing, but the lack of horsepower, it was still a great track weapon. It didn't weigh very much, it was made to go around a track, and it was still making enough horsepower to get it going. But since then, it's got LS2s, it's got LS7s, it has got superchargers, turbochargers, it's been in racing, it's had variants that have claimed to do like 240, 250 miles per hour, and it was really this track threat from America. But the reality is, I see nobody talking about this car. Like, I've seen a fair bit of people talk about Selena 7s, I strangely see a fair bit of Vector stuff on the internet. The Ford GT's got so much love from every generation, but the Mosler is just that one car that really didn't get the love. It's super low production, it always used LS engine. It's kind of the LS powered Selena 7 to some extent, but nonetheless, I've always thought they're just so cool and kind of underappreciated, especially today. Next up is the Mazda Miata.
What?
Now, in 1998, Mazda made the Mazda Miata NB, being the Gen 2 Miata, and that went from 1998 to 2005 before they went to the NC Miata, being the Gen 3. And while started making the Gen 2 NB Mazda Miata, Mazda actually made a hardtop coupe Miata. And not like the current Miata coupe, which it's still very much a convertible, it just has a not fixed roof to it. But this was a completely fixed hardtop Miata that the roof was not going anywhere or changing at all. It was a part of the bodywork. Mazda made like less than 200 of these. They never come up in conversations due to they are so goddamn obscure. Which is kind of a shame, because I thought these things were really cool, and know the creator of the Miata wanted to do more of that chassis. So this probably may have been a little bit of a test run going forward, and I don't know if it just was made to be low production or if it was made to be more than it was and just sold super poorly, but I think these things are super cool nonetheless. Next up, a small, obscure brand known as Lamborghini. Now in the 1960s, the shining diamond of the Lamborghini lineup was the Miata. The Miata ran from, I believe, 1966 to 1973. If I'm wrong, it's right here. But going into the 1970s, they wanted to change up their lineup a little bit. And they actually pulled out some front-engine cars, most famously being the Espada. The Espada was kind of made to be a grand touring car, but kind of also a front-engine Miata to some extent. That car, despite it's not the most popular Lamborghini ever, it is a lot more well-known. But what isn't as well-known is the Lamborghini Haro. Now the Haro, much like the Espada, was a GT-styled two-door front-engine V12 Lamborghini. But unlike the Miata, or to some extent the Espada, this thing looked weird. All the angles are a little bit off, the pop-up headlights are odd, and just none of the proportions are quite right, especially in the rear fenders. But you still got a V12 Lamborghini, and it sounded brilliant. They did not make many Haramas, and I'm not really shocked that not many people bought them just due to their kind of fugly design. And to this day, it's not that nobody talks about them, but they're kind of forgotten about. Next up, a car from Di Tommaso. Now, if I go up to some people and ask them, name me a car from Di Tommaso, I think one of two things are going to happen. A, they're going to ask, what's Di Tommaso? Or B, they're going to say the Pantera. But predating the Pantera, in the 1960s, Di Tommaso is making a mid-engine sports car with a Ford 289 in it, and that was the Mangusta. Put simply, the Mangusta is stunning. Just look at this thing. It's absolutely beautiful. And as one really cool feature that I'm sure was so inconvenient, the Mangusta actually had a gull wing hood in the back. I'm sure this car was a bitch to work on. I've seen one Mangusta, and it was just such a treat to see. I think they made like 400 cars, and the owner said like 3 were in Ontario. And yeah, they are just absolutely stunning. But Di Tommaso as a brand isn't really that big right now, and the biggest car is the Pantera, and some people have kind of forgotten about the Pantera a little bit. Not everyone, not you, but some. And at this point, really nobody talks about the Mangusta, and it's kind of been forgotten about. But going to something a bit more modern, a bit more mundane, but we're going to be going to Hummer. Now right now, Hummer makes the Hummer EV in a truck-forward SUV form. But prior to being a 1,000 horsepower massive EV, this thing was actually a off-road vehicle. Made for the American military, the Hummer H1 and the Humvee was kind of the one that set the tone. Once it went to the H2, it was made to be a bit softer, a bit more luxurious, a bit more usable, and kind of a bit more practical. And then going to the H3. Now the H3, I believe, was built off a Chevy Colorado frame. It was using the same 5-cylinder and roughly the same proportions. It was a lot smaller than the H2. But at the very end of the H3's life, at lasting for only 2009-2010, Hummer made the H3T. Now, it's funny about the H3T, if you look at it now, it kind of looks like it was a prototype for the current Jeep Renegade. Just for that same boxy body and kind of the front end's pretty similar. But it still uses that 5-cylinder. And what's funny about it is you could actually get a tonneau cover for it, which made it look like kind of a Cybertruck to some extent. Or the Cybertruck looked like the H3T. But America was in a recession. Hummer is one of the ones cut from GM. And it made it so the H3T really didn't have a long life. Again, it was only 2009 and 2010. It's pretty easy putting like supercars on this list, but finding something that was readily available to the general public is kind of funny to have on this list. And last up is Lexus. Now, the early 2000s, Lexus started work on a supercar, and this thing was going to be front engine, rear wheel drive, and a lot of power. Lexus started and stopped this car multiple times, building the car out of aluminum, stopping, then building the car all over again out of carbon fiber to make this thing perfect. Now, you've probably already gathered, I'm talking about the Lexus LFA. Now, why is the LFA on this list? Well, despite that, when it came out, it did get a lot of love, but didn't get a lot of love from people who could actually afford to buy one, and they didn't sell that well. The LFA has went down as just this supercar that people absolutely love and adore, which is why they're like $1 million right now. But they actually made a handful of Lexus LFA convertibles. Now, honestly, I think this is probably one of the coolest convertibles ever made, and I think it's just stunning. I think the LFA is cool. I think this thing is so much cooler. And also think about it, top down, you get to hear that noise. Unbelievable, but also I think they made like 3 or 4 cars, so you're never ever gonna see one on the road. But anyway, that is 6 cars that you've probably forgotten about. But I want to know, what do you think? Are you a car nerd just like myself and you knew about every single one of these cars, or were there any surprises to you? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, subscribe, enjoy what you've seen. I tend to post a couple times a week, and I'll see you later.